version1.com. You can take a look at that. So we have our requirements analysis, design, development, system test, UAT, and then post-project. The green line that you see is the time where when we release the product to business, right? We all have done that. We all have seen that. We all have been successful at it at some points of time, but with a lot of he did this, he did not do this, she did this, she did not do this, and a lot of change coming after that, or going into a huge maintenance period after deploying into the business. When business does the testing their way, and we have not had any interaction with business all this time, what happens? Oh, this is not how I wanted it to be. This is not how it's going to work for my users. That's how the business folks tell us. And I don't know how many of you have sat into such meetings, but I have, and heard, no, I do not want this. You know, this has to go through the change. I cannot even put users through the training of this product unless this change has been made. And then this whole process gets elongated by more months, more time, costing more. So we all know about traditional development. And it has its shortcomings, and in some of the previous sessions we have seen the sort of shortcomings of traditional development and discussed them. So we're going to move to our next slide. Agile development. We all know the difference. I'm not going to go too much into detail because this is not testing specific. Just quickly, Agile development. You know about Agile. Short iterations, 1 to 4 week iterations, and we deliver to customer something valuable to customer at the end of every iteration, or at the end of 2 iterations. Some companies do it. Now, how practical it is to do it, to test and deliver something value every iteration, I don't know. From some of the experiences that I've had with Agile so far, they don't release after every iteration, and they maybe hold it for like 2 iterations or 3 and then release it. But still, as long as we are getting continuous feedback from the customer and delivering it at a constant pace and not everything in one big fat release, it will provide value. Okay. So the manifesto for Agile software development, we all know it. Individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, responding to change over following a plan. So we all have heard it. How well we implement these, or do we implement only 2, or do we implement all 4? Yes, Agile Manifesto says that, but as per my experience, I feel that it depends on the system under test and the team. Is to, you know, if you have not experienced testers or developers on the team, you may want to put some processes in place and some tools in place and give them a little bit higher priority over individuals and interactions. But once they become skilled and then they know the product well, then the feedback that they're giving is much more important than the process and the tools. So that's our plain Agile. We'll go to the next slide. Okay, Scrum. So Agile has many methodologies under its umbrella. It has XP, it has Lean, Crystal, it has Scrum, which is most widely followed because it's a very lightweight framework. It can be easily adapted with the kind of traditional development that we are doing today. So most of the companies go for Scrum. In Scrum, as you know, we have 3 roles: Scrum Master, Scrum Team, Product Owner. We're not going to go in any of this in detail because this presentation is not on Agile. The presentation is about testing in Agile or Agile testing. So participate and answer just 3 questions: what you did yesterday, what you're going to do today, and are there any roadblocks or impediments. Now, in the Scrum, we have sprint backlog, which is your features. All the features that are going to be developed or worked on are put in as stories in backlog. Backlog items are then enhanced by the team by adding acceptance criteria and many other things needed. Those items are then prioritized along with the product owner, and the team takes on the iteration cycle and works on them and delivers to the customer. Any questions so far? Just some basics of Agile, okay? So now, how do we look at some of the things that we need from Agile? We need to adapt. We need to embrace change. This is something very different from how we are doing things today. We don't like change. We have a whole change management. We have a whole change management process. But in Agile, it's not that way. We embrace change. We say, bring on the change. We'll take a look at it. We'll let you know how much time it will take to develop, test, and deliver to you. And because we are meeting customer and we are demoing to the customer every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks at the end of every iteration, customer is very well aware how much time it will take for this change and what kind of change I'm asking when. Also, putting it in the sprint backlog and managing it that way already takes care of the documentation that comes with the change management. So we don't have to get something else signed that, oh, this needs to be, this is a new change and it has gone through the change management process and everybody in the upper management has given their okay for this change to be developed and tested. So change is going to happen, and in Agile we embrace change. Collaborate. We co-locate team members. A lot of companies, when they took on Agile methodology, they made testers and developers sit in one big room so that they can talk to each other, they can listen to each other, and they can collaborate, and everybody's on the same page as to what they're working on so that we deliver one version of truth to the customer. Get feedback. So we test early, and often everybody has heard that everyone on an Agile team is a tester. Everybody tests or needs to have a testing mentality to think, oh, how will business like it? What will happen when a user does this and it goes through testing? So if we have that mentality and we test early, find defects, fix them within the iteration, at the end of the iteration, customer accepts, gives us the feedback, and we move on. Communicate. Communication is very, very important in Agile teams. In traditional model of software development, less communication we can go with because there is so much process, and the current model is so much process driven that even if we skip communication, the process may take us to the next step. But in Agile, there is no communication. We will not be able to deliver the value that we want to deliver to the customer at the end of the iteration. So that is important. And deliver value, we've talked about this already. And we do all these things continuously in short time boxes. Okay, now coming to software testing, how it has been in the past. Testing is often the last to be brought onto teams. Who does not agree with this? So, this is one of the best criteria to see if do 2-week iterations. We release things to production in 2-week iterations. And you know how they worked? They had their sprint backlog, stories, everything. They developed the stories. Let's say Friday is the end of the sprint. Tuesday, testers will get everything, or the 4 stories that they have developed in that iteration. From Tuesday to Thursday, they will test. Thursday morning, they'll let the team know if they have found any fixes. Friday, they'll do the paperwork to get it released on Friday evening. That's not agile. That is iterative waterfall. So, to break this, what I suggested, and I think it sort of worked, is let's try deploying twice. Then after a couple iterations, we'll try deploying 3 times. So when we say twice, let's say pretty much we have seen in every iteration, we are planning 4 stories or 6 stories. Let's have a deployment on Wednesday, the very first week in a 2-week cycle, and then Tuesday, the next week. At least, so the idea is to break it even smaller chunks, and then eventually after having 3 cycles, they're like, okay, let's not have any cycle. If I have my story done, I'll check it in and I'll let QA know, and QA will be able to test it. Then the tool that we use for our agile management can help us. If we have stories and testing tasks and development tasks, everything at one place, we could easily see if development tasks say done, and the estimated hours along the development tasks are 0. If they're 0, it means I'm ready to do my work as a tester. So I don't have to wait for 3 stories to be delivered to me, or it has to be a certain time that the build will happen. Now, there are many things that comes with this, that is, builds need to be automated. So there has to be some process to support Agile. A lot of people say that Agile does not follow processes. So forget process, it is individuals and interactions over processes and tools. But I think they're still important, because you need tools or you need a process to have a build every day, or twice in a day, depending on the kind of environment you work in. Okay, adversarial relationship with development team. So, in traditional model, a development team is separate than a testing team. There is a test team and there is a development team. In Agile, there is no such concept. There is just a team. It's not development or it's not testing. So, testers are called developers, or developers are also called testers. They're just part of a Scrum team and not developers or testers. This has helped testers feel part of the team. They're involved in everything that developers are involved in. So I have worked at many companies where they strictly follow the traditional waterfall methodology. And the testing team sits at a completely separate floor than the development folks. Same building, but different floors. And the interaction that development team is having with business is never communicated to the testers. In this case, what are testers testing? They are actually testing the design. They're not testing the features. Because we don't know what the features are. I never talk to the business. How do I know what business wants? I'm hearing this version of what they want from developers' mouths, not straight from the business.
this thing has happened to us also. Our company, SIC, has adopted Agile rules or Agile methodologies, or has gone Agile for the past 2 years. And before that, we used to be part of a very big team. And it was a traditional, if you want to say that, a waterfall. And our team was all segregated. I mean, the tester used to sit at one place, and because it was a huge team, we weren't even sure for the longest period of time that who all were the part of one single team. I mean, someday some developer will come to us and say that, okay, this is what has been done or this has been done. So there was a lot of separation and isolation going on over there. We were definitely not sure who the business was or what they really wanted. And so I totally understand what it is, because now that we have gone Agile, we are kind of working in a collaborative environment. Half of our teams, it's a still ongoing process, but half of our team spaces has been broken down from cubes to open spaces where everyone is sitting together and everyone is having meeting together. Our sales counted, like what in every planning meetings we are involved over there. That kind of owning the application satisfaction part wasn't there initially, but now it is changing.
Yes, and that impacts a lot, because that shows that testers have a stake in the applications, in the application we are testing. It's not that we are just testing and someone else is going to deal with whatever problems are there later on. It is our application too, it is our work. We are as much responsible for it as any other member of the team. Testing teams don't have the right testing tools needed to test. I do not have any slide in my presentation about the tools, but here I want to quickly talk about some of the testing tools. HPALM is used most widely than any other testing tool. But now that companies are going more and more towards Agile, they are looking into other tools, other softwares like Cucumber that uses Gherkin scripts, and Selenium, and many other tools that foster Agile in a much better way than HP or Rational tools do. Historical emphasis on upfront analysis of entire project. So we have done it in the past, it worked, or it at least worked for 70% of the parts, so it will work this time too. Let's just do the whole analysis, the whole plan, the whole strategy right now, and then we will start working on it. We don't do that in Agile. Testers often lack automation skills. This is, again, something that I have seen a lot in a lot of my projects, is that they don't get a tester on a team that has automation skill. Or at least one tester. If there are 5 testers on a team, none of them will have any automation background. And then what will happen is, once they have done some sort of testing and said, okay, yeah, this looks pretty stable, pretty good, then it will go to a separate automation department where there will be automation testers, and they will take on the code and start automating some of the manual tests that we have. Or manual testing will occur, and even though they are a part of the team, they will automate the regression testing suite that the tester has created. Has the tester asked the developer or the business that, is this the right regression suite? Are these the test cases that should be included in the regression suite? We don't ask anybody, we pretty much make that decision. Agile testing proposes that we don't make the decision of what is going to be in the regression suite. We involve developers, product owner, and everybody in the team to make that decision and to create the regression suite as we go along, so that it is automated and run every time there's a new code deployed. A tester's job is to find, log, and manage defects. Again, sort of touched on this, and I have ownership part away from us. So this is all how we have done things in the past. So what is transformed? Let's look at it from waterfall to agile.
What's the alternative to that mindset? That the tester's job is to find and report bugs?
So testers be a part of the whole process, not just testing after everything is done and find the defect. We actually, in Agile, write the complete scenario from a user perspective of how it should be done. Does that make sense? So we don't only say, okay, yeah, you have designed this, I'll push the button, let's say if it is a GUI application, I'll put in a username, a password, push the login button, and I'll get some data, and yeah, it worked. No, I will say that what kind of username should I have put there? Are you sure that every username needs a password? Does customer want that? What if I quickly push the login button twice? What will happen then? Will the application break? Those are the scenarios that I have discussed already with the business. And I'm not just an old mindset tester who's sitting and doing testing according to the design document.
So you're giving feedback?
Absolutely. Continuous feedback all the time. In any meeting and this is very hard to change, and I have seen that this is very hard to change, but in any meeting, if your organization says that they're agile, in any meeting that they're having with business, there should at least be one testing representative there. At least.
So this used to happen with us also. As you said, the mindset is totally changed in the sense that the tester, as she said, is involved in all sorts of meetings. At least one tester will be there, right from the planning part of it, integration planning meetings, or you're doing retrospectives, or what new backlog items you will take into the next iteration. You will do, the three amigos meeting, some teams call it, where the tester will be involved, solution analyst will be involved, and the developer will be involved. So what I'm trying to say is every place there is a representation of tester, and the testing team has a say rather than just giving the work at the end that why don't now it's the time to just go ahead and test it.
I don't know how many of you are already doing that. Having a representative, a testing representative in any meeting that business is there. Okay, so probably know how hard it was to change that mindset if your organization did not have that before. One of the clients that I worked at, I still remember that I had to show my frustration to the development team, to the whole team, to the Scrum Master, that regardless of, even if it is a hallway conversation with a business owner or one of the business representatives where you are discussing a feature, you need to say, hold on, let's call a 15-minute meeting, a quick meeting, and have the tester there as well. So we created something called 3-person rule that Lisa and Janet, the book that I talked about, they've explained that a little bit more, but it really helps. 3-person rule is anytime there's a discussion over a feature or how something in an application should be done, have business, developer, and tester always there. So strategy. As I said, we write it once, it's always evolving in Agile. Test planning. Test planning in traditional is done per project, detail, fixed scope, has fixed scope. Scope is always changing. Business decides the scope, and if they want that they don't intend to have a certain feature incorporated, they can always take it out. They know what the cost of putting a new change in is. Risk is assessed up front. So all the test plans that we create, I've always had a risk column in test plan. We always do. And we say, oh, what is the risk? Oh, not having enough hardware. Agile, that is a column that should change pretty much every iteration. And we as testers need to bring out new risks or potential risks that we see that will occur or may occur moving forward. And say, okay, this developer, I literally changed the risk column or the risk section of the test plan and started, instead of having like a chart table and they have resources risks or tools risks or whatever, I started putting it in points. And I said, okay, first point, this developer is out for 2 weeks. The testing tasks related to this story may not be completed, or this tester is out for 2 weeks for this iteration. So you point any and every kind of risk that you see. Say, okay, this needs SOAP UI to test web services. We do not have anybody on our team who knows SOAP UI. So it's a risk. So instead of just saying that having inappropriate skill set or not having the full skill set, you actually point out what you see as a risk. Define the risk. It is ever-evolving. Documentation. We create a lot of documentation. We actually can put it in the test plan. What all will be delivered as part of test documentation in the end of system testing. Here, our tests itself are documentation. We don't need any other documentation because we're doing a demo after end of every iteration. And customer is getting everything that they need. In big organizations, there still may be some need of certain kind of documentation to make sure that developers, testers, everybody did their tasks appropriately and they did what they are saying they did. So sometimes just working tests may not be enough, but in an organization, again, how we talked about a lot of soft skills in our previous sessions, if you have trust and we are collaborative and all those good things are there, then working tests are enough documentation from the testing team. Defects, they're logged, they're managed. We log it, 4 months later, developer comes and says, can you reproduce this? I myself have to go and read all the reproducible steps before I can reproduce it, because it's been 4 months. I forgot how I got that defect. So if we find a defect, we made a rule that in the stand-up meeting, after our 3 questions that we answer, any defects we find will be discussed right then and there in front of the whole team. So we're going to have a conversation about it. Yes, we will log and we will manage it and all that, but that's not all that we're going to do. Probably it's only going to take 2 minutes to fix it for a developer, and he can do it today and incorporate it rather than it's sitting and he's saying, oh, this is not high priority, so I'm not going to take a look at it.
Did you say that's after the stand-up meeting is over?
Yes, that's what we practiced. I'm just sharing some of the things that I have practiced, being on a couple Agile teams, but it could be, at the end of the day, I've seen some of the teams do it at the end of the day. At the end of the day, like 4:30 to 4:45, they had a quick defect review meeting or impediment meeting where anything that stopped testing was reviewed.
But of course you log it too.
Yes. I haven't worked in any organization that go with just a conversation and without logging and managing defects. I think upper management is still looking for some sort of defect matrix at the end of the day where they want to see what kind of defects were found and how they were logged and managed. Also, I think it is important to log the defects because after a couple iterations, we were able to see where we had most of the defects and what part of the application we had most of the defects. So, we can focus on doing some additional testing in that part. Matrix, again, that was also decided how we're going to do by project, by application. Here, team decides what kind of reporting works for them, what kind of metrics work for them. Do they want to see the defect numbers? Do they want to see how many hours they spent on doing what? What kind will help them provide more value in the next iteration? Those kind of metrics they use. Resources, multiple projects and apps. They're one app, one project at a time. Now, you can have, in an organization, you can have multiple Scrum teams, and this team is working on this app, this team is working on this app, this team is working on another app, and after a couple iterations, they come together and they see, okay, how do we integrate these apps? Or how are they integrated and how do we test them? That is a separate thing. But still, one Scrum team is working on one application at a time. Or, to clarify it a little bit more, is writing one story for only that app. A story should not be written for two apps at the same time. Let's say if you have to make a logo change and you have 5 applications. Try and create 5 stories. Because what you will have to do as a tester, you'll have to log in into all 5 applications to test that change. Right? So how is that one story? Per app gets one story only. So it is a good practice to not mix apps and stories. Okay. Now, what is agile testing? Many companies define this, or many organizations define this in many different ways. It is simple. It's a software testing practice. It's a testing practice, and we follow the same principles and the manifesto of Agile. Now, here I would like to point one thing out. Even if your organization is following a waterfall model or a traditional model, you can still have a test team that is doing agile testing. And this is something, give it a thought. We can do agile testing even in waterfall models. Even if our development teams are doing the things their way, we as testers can provide continuous feedback. We can always look at the risks and see what risks are coming and update our test plan as we go. Right? We can inform developers of some of the scenarios that we are going to use in our testing, and if they have thought about it before they develop the code. We can still be collaborative. We may not be able to do all the 100 things Agile talks about, but we can do quite a lot of them. So, continuously improving testing practices. Our testing practice, the way we do testing, what do we do? How do we do? Do we do manual testing, exploratory testing? Do we do performance testing? When we do it, how we do it? We can continuously improve that. Tests that focus on what's delivered incrementally. Again, let's say you are having an iterative software development methodology that you're following. But still, you are deploying something in increments. Still in that, you can focus your tests on what is delivered this time, and then focus your test on what is delivered next time, rather than working on writing of all the tests that will be delivered on all the cycles first, and then start the execution. Applying thought to a user scenario, considering inputs and outputs over following a checklist. We will talk about exploratory, and I'll cover this more, but again, as I said, think about the scenarios rather than just going through a checklist. That, okay, this is my requirement checklist, I've covered this, I've done the happy path testing of all this, or the negative testing of all this, but you only tested one scenario. What about other scenarios that users who don't know the application in and out may try to do, or what kind of systems that they are working on. And those kind of scenarios we keep in mind. We'll touch on that a little bit later.
So I have an example of doing Agile into a traditional kind of a team. Currently I'm working, although our company's IT is going Agile, we have one team and several teams all over the nation, and one of the teams is in New York. And they pretty much follow a more iterative waterfall kind of a strategy, and I'm working on a project currently wherein the deployment needs to be done at the very end. It's April of next year. So because we were already working on Agile and we really saw the benefits of what Agile can do for us, what we thought is why not do some kind of a pseudo Agile wherein the development part of the application can be done more in an Agile sense. So by development I mean is both developing the code as well as the testing part. So we came up with a process wherein the developers and the testers will be following the regular Agile processes where all we will have the daily stand-up meetings. Although it is in New York time, we adjusted a time. We will have 2-week iterations. We will decide on what all things, although it's a huge chunk of requirements, but we divide it up into more user stories kind of a thing. And although it's not getting implemented, but every 2 weeks we have decided this is what needs to be done, and the whole chunk of the layer of cake, the whole functionality will be developed completely and tested at the end of the 2 iterations. And at the end of every 2 iterations we can have a show and tell wherein the business can come in and basically see that what's happening. So the business became really, really happy because they weren't expecting this. They were expecting the application at the very end. But now that we are going about it, we see more benefits of, the business says that, okay, if you can probably change things like this or that.
Okay, next slide. So Agile testing point of view, some of this we've already talked about, so I'll quickly go over this. Improve quality and eliminate duplication. We do that by test-driven development approach. Test strategy and planning. Test strategy and planning should be carried out, but they need to be flexible and adaptable. I just talked about how you need to change the test plan as you move forward if you have created one at the beginning of software development. Testing automation. In testing automation, reducing the inefficient repetition of manual tasks. We all know what testing automation is. And relevant expertise. Similarly, the role of the tester has to adapt. It becomes richer and more influential. We talked about this, that in any meeting, a tester needs to be involved so that tester can also influence how development will be done. Let's move on. Focus of Agile testing, high value features first. So when there is backlog prioritization going on, it is very important that we understand what are high value features. Sometimes product owners or business owners can prioritize as to what their users or their customers will like to see, but we still need to find out to see the bigger picture as to what are the high value features. When everything is done and the development is complete, what will be the most critical parts of the applications? We may not be developing it in this cycle, but at least for a tester to have a big picture, we need to know that. Multiple builds delivering value. So again, we know that we're going to have multiple builds. I talked about it. So remember how I talked about having 2 builds, a Tuesday and a Wednesday, and then 3 builds, and then every time a new code was deployed. Test behavior-driven development. You all know what that is. Automated acceptance testing, exploratory testing. I'm going to touch quite a bit on this. Continuous build and integration, and constant regression, paired programming. Pair programming, when I say pair programming, or when I first heard about pair programming, it means two developers developing the code together. Yes, but in Agile sense, it can also mean a developer and a tester sitting together, and while a developer is developing, tester is testing at the same time, maybe in the dev environment. Continuous build and integration. Every time there is a build, you should have regression suite ready and automated to run it. This will save a lot of time and a lot of effort. You don't need to do any manual testing if it breaks running automation testing without you doing anything. So I want to give an example. Something that we did is we had batch processes run every night, off hours, when nobody's working, every single day. And they're just automated tests. They will run in the night from, let's say, 8 to 12 or 9 to 1 or whatever. And in the morning, as soon as the tester comes, the first thing he or she is going to look at is, are there any failures? And if there are any failures, why am I not looking at that failure first instead of testing something new today? Right? Because our idea of agile development or providing value in iteration to customer is that what we have given should be solid. There shouldn't be any defects in that. Or if we are building new features, what we have tested in the past and delivered in the past should not break. So if that is breaking, then we have an issue. We need to look at that first before testing further. Okay, why agile testing? Since working increments of the software is released very often in agile software development, there is also a need to test often. Again, as I said, we're delivering in increments. So we need to test often, daily, twice a day. We run our automation tests to make sure that what we have delivered is not breaking. Code may come to you 2 times a day, 3 times a day, depending on whenever developer is done with his story, or his part of the story. We need to test every time there is a build. Now this is just from the 2010 Forrester research that Agile is the primary development method. 16% use iterative and 13% still use waterfall. Testing moves the project forward. Now this is shifting our mindset. It took me some time to change my mindset also, because we always worked as gatekeepers, or have worked as gatekeepers, saying, oh, we protect what goes in production. It cannot go unless it goes through us, or we sign off on everything and we follow the sign-off process. Agile, again, collaborative means don't say that I am this gate, you cannot go past me. Tell them, I don't think this should go in production yet because this piece is not done. Can I help in some way in putting this piece together so that we can push this to production? So that is the different mentality. Again, I've put that what happens in the traditional team. We work as a quality gatekeeper, and on Agile team, we provide feedback ongoing basis so that we meet the business needs. Again, as I said, this sounds like a small shift, but it has profound implications. There are a lot of benefits with this, with the change of this mindset. It is a small thing, but don't put any criteria or restrictions on what cannot go to production. Let's say if there is a feature and it is not completely development, like very simple example, you're putting a username password in, click on login, an error is thrown by the application. Okay, fine. At least we have something to show to the business. And we can tell business, hey, we were not able to complete the full feature, we're working on it, we'll complete it in the next sprint, but but at least you got to see how the home screen will be, where the user will be able to enter username and password. So at least we are delivering something. So let's not make any rules in Agile as Agile testers saying, this will not go because this is not fully developed. Now, how? Let's come to how to do Agile testing. We create testable user stories. Every story needs to have a testing aspect and should be estimated according to the testing effort. So when we first started to do Agile, everybody played a story estimation poker, putting a card up as to what the story point would be for that story. And mostly the feedback on how much story points it would be came from developers. It needs to come from testers as well. And testers need to say, it may take you 1 day to develop, but this is a lot of testing effort for me because this touches 6 areas. So I'll have to go make sure that all those 6 areas are working fine along with this new feature. Acceptance criteria leads to acceptance tests. This is very important. Our test, the basis of our testing comes from the acceptance criteria. Do not accept a story or start working on it unless it has a clear acceptance criteria defined. It is very important. Again, it forms the test basis for our testing. Ensuring story is testable when planning. That is also very important. Again, for this, we collaborate to converse. Being the voice of test when stories are created. I talked about it, that even when the stories are being written, now there are 2 different meetings usually that organizations follow. One is a backlog grooming and one is a planning. Planning meeting is when we do story estimation and all that, but when they're doing backlog grooming, they usually don't involve testers. And again, it is very important for testers to be involved at that stage so that when the stories are being created, a test voice is there, a tester's voice is there. Okay, break conventional views. We have conventional views. Story exploration leads to exploratory testing. Refactoring isn't just for development. We do it too. We write our test cases, something changes, or it doesn't test, or we think of a new scenario, we go and refactor in our test and test again. Pairing is a good idea for testing too. I already talked about this. Working tests over test documentation. We touched this. It's not important to just have test documentation that, oh, I have created 12 tests and 8 of them has passed and 4 of them has failed. It is more important that the tests are actually working and they're clear. They define all the possible scenarios that needs to be tested. Developing test feedback loops, acceptance criteria, shared tests, all that. Avoiding the squeeze. This is very important again. And again, it takes us back to involving testing in the story estimation, because the whole idea why we are doing Agile testing is so that we can avoid the squeeze, so that we are not in the last getting only this much time and this much was planned to test. There have been a lot of times that I've pushed back and said, we cannot go to production. You have to pull this story out of the build because I haven't finished testing on this. I need to finish testing on this. I'm only 80% done. Oh, well, you're 80% done, so most of the testing is done. Let's go to prod. No, we will not release it to the customer or even demo it to the customer because you do not want anything to break in front of customer that you haven't tested 100%. Learn to code or be left behind. It is very important that we at least, okay, maybe not learning how to code, but understand the code. If you see an error, if you see a Java error, you should be able to see, okay, I think this is why it failed. After a couple iterations, if you see a similar error, you'll be able to see, oh, this is something related to what happened a couple iterations before. Let me go look how it was fixed and how much time it took, and have a conversation about it with the rest of the team.
say something about avoiding the squeeze?
Yes,